Today we'll be looking at Dynamics SL, both the attachment and DocShare integrations with Microsoft SharePoint. Our presenter will be Jim Hayes, Solution Architect for SIS. I'm Gary Vadney, a Senior Account Executive for SIS, and if you have any questions today, you can get in touch with SIS Customer Account Manager Talisha Simpson, and her information is on the screen. A little bit about SIS. We deliver ERP, CRM, and SharePoint solutions to contractors and professional service organizations. We've been doing that for over 22 years. We do it with integrated business solutions powered by Microsoft technology. And at the core of our technology is Microsoft Dynamics SL and AX, typically managing the financial and operational aspects of an organization. If you look to the top of it, you're going to see project management and Microsoft SharePoint Compass. Throughout our presentation today, you'll see examples of the SharePoint integration with Dynamics SL. Sometimes this is being presented through Compass, which is a pre-configured Microsoft SharePoint solution. It's also a document management solution. It creates a dedicated site for each project, and it uses tools called smart templates for managing things like submittals and transmittals and Outlook integration. We also manage meeting minutes, daily logs, and drawings and libraries and such. It's available on-premise and also in a SaaS model. Today's webinar information, if you have any problems, you can contact Debbie Peavy, and her email is dpeavy@sis.com. All the phone lines are muted, so if you could hold your questions to the end, we appreciate it. And for optimal viewing, if you could go to a full screen, that would work best. And the webinar is being recorded, so you can come back and enjoy it. A little bit about today's presenter, Jim Hayes. He's a solution architect with SIS, and his primary focus is on our Compass and other SharePoint-related products. He's worked with SharePoint for quite some time. He has experience with all of the Dynamics product lines, and he also has experience leading development teams using Microsoft technology. And it looks like they still let him into Disney World, and with that, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Hayes to review the agenda.
Gary, thank you very much. And yeah, I know they don't let you in anymore, so I know you'd be jealous that they let me in still. So I keep talking to them every time I go down, and hopefully we'll get you back in. So also, I'm kind of happy. I'm a little bit happy that everyone's muted, but not real happy. Just a few of you out there that I know have sent me emails about attending, that I may be happy that you're muted. But in general, you know, it's said to hold the questions to the end, but I know people will be monitoring the chat. So if you have a question that you think is timely, go ahead and put it in there, and maybe Gary can jump in and let me know about it. So just to give you an idea of today's agenda, here's just some bullet points. Overview of attachments in Dynamics SL. It's a feature that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about uploading those attachments into a SharePoint library, because you can actually also upload them to the network, which we won't be covering today. Using SharePoint approval functionality and writing some custom workflows, and we'll be talking about how the whole process can benefit from that. Setting up list sites for SL projects, customers, and vendors, and that leads us into DocShare, because that's one of the ways that you work with DocShare, and one of the things that you need to do to set up DocShare and the decisions you need to make. We're also specifically, as it relates to projects, using DocShare with flexible billing module to upload billings to multiple SharePoint SL project sites. So we'll be doing that and a few other things. Primarily, though, we're going to focus on the aspects of these features and the integration with SharePoint that allow you to do your business more efficiently and to extend the functionality of SL and to have it work with SharePoint. So what is the Dynamics SL attachment feature? It basically does what it says it does. It allows you to attach multiple documents to specific entities, specifically screens, right, for the most part. So the screens that you're on doing the different activities that you do within SL, you can link each of those screens to a different library, and we'll show you how to do that in SharePoint. The example we're going to use today is the example I have here, which is uploading vendor invoices to the AP voucher and adjustment entry screen. Once you've done that, you can actually get to those documents two ways. One is to recall and review the documents from the Dynamics SL screen. So the same avenue basically that you take to upload those documents, you can go back and view them within SL. And of course, if you have it configured the way we're talking about doing it today, we'll also store those documents in a document library in Microsoft SharePoint. So you can also go there. You don't even really have to be an SL user. As long as you have rights to go and look at that document library, you'll be able to do that. So let's kind of talk through, and then the way I'm going to kind of go through the hour today is I'm going to talk through each of these different topics and show you some screenshots, and then we're going to actually go in and look at the screens so you can kind of see them in the context of either SL or SharePoint. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to configure Dynamics SL to store attachments. So if you click on Administration in your menu in SL, you'll come to the System Manager screen. Obviously, you have to have the correct permissions to be able to do this. You'll come to the section called Maintenance. If you look on the right side, almost to the end, the second from the bottom, is Attachments Configuration. When you click on that, this screen is going to come up, and what you basically need to do is you need to fill in three pieces of information. So the first piece of information is the screen number. Now if you notice, even the attachment configuration here shows it at the top, so that one is 98.400.00. The one we talked about, the AP voucher and adjustment entry, is 03.10.00. Now the table that it's associated with can sometimes be challenging, so we can definitely help you with that. This one's kind of straightforward. It's AP Documents, AP Doc. And so once you have both of those, you go down and say whether you want to save it to SharePoint Document Library or an existing folder location. You can use the DocShare settings as well, but at that point it kind of makes you're extending out the base functionality. In today's seminar, we're basically going to address the basic functionality of DocShare, which is rather significant. So you want to put in the whole URL, starting with the HTTP up to the actual document library name, which in this case is AP Invoices. You don't necessarily want to put in anything past that. Once you put that in, when you actually cut and paste the URL into the field here that asks for it, it will actually go out and check and make sure that exists. So that kind of helps you with typos. And once it confirms it exists, then you can go ahead and save that. Now, let's talk about a couple other issues that you'll want to consider as you do this. The first one is user permissions. So obviously you have to have the permission to the screen in SL, but in addition, if you're going to have a user upload documents into a document library in SharePoint, they're going to also have to have the permissions in that SharePoint library to add items into the library, because that's basically what they're doing. The other thing, and this is specifically on the SharePoint side, a lot of people who use this tend to turn on what's called the content approval feature under the versioning settings for the settings in the library. And again, we're going to jump in and look at these, and you can see where you turn these on and off. And that basically sets up kind of a workflow routing, in that you have a person that's going to send it up there, upload it to it. It will go in what's referred to as a pending state, and then another person can come in and do approval or reject it. Okay? Now, if for any reason the workflow that we talked about is your situation is a little bit more involved than that, then, we haven't really talked about this quite yet, but one of the things that we've done with clients who may actually be listening on this particular webinar right now is we've created a custom workflow that takes the file name that's uploaded and takes pieces of it, it's called parsing, takes pieces of the file name out and puts it into different columns, which allow you to sort and filter the items in that library. And so we have actually two pieces of functionality that is actually part of Compass, but that we're making available to people outside of Compass for certain situations. So the first one is called the Compass Workflow Engine, and it supports portable and reusable workflows. Now, the importance of that is SharePoint itself does not support that. SharePoint does not allow you to copy workflows from one site to another. So what we can create with that, for instance, is a custom-coded, parameter-driven, reusable file name parsing workflow. Try saying that 3 times quickly. Let me cut that down for you, kind of chop that into size. So custom-coded means we are going to have to go into Visual Studio and write something up and create what's called a DLL. But it's going to be parameter-driven, which means you can configure it without having to rewrite that workflow. And it's reusable because the workflows are portable, so you can use it on multiple libraries. So hopefully that explained that rather mouthful of a phrase there. The other thing, so that's kind of on the parsing side to put in this information for categorizing the different items. On the workflow side, if you just don't want a pending and an approval, if you actually have a series of people that it needs to go to, each needing their approval, then we have what's called the Compass Activity Routing Engine. And it's actually powered by the Compass Workflow Engine and allows for multiple step routing scenarios and can be applied to any SharePoint library, even those that you would use with SL integration. As a matter of fact, both of these products are meaty. They have a lot of depth to them and a lot of different areas to explore. So we'll actually be having a future webcast on these pieces of functionality. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, and there will be multiple ones of these, the live demo, because this is usually where things go wrong. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look and see where we configure the attachments. So again, we go to Administration, System Manager, the Maintenance area. It's the top area here. We go to the Attachments Configuration. Screen pops up, and using our example is 03.010.00. And then you notice when I tab to the next area, it does kind of match it up with you and let you know that you've done the correct thing. And then I type in the table, and when I tab again, it shows we've already set it up, and it's pointing to that specific library on our demo site there of SharePoint, which is where I set everything up. And then, of course, you would save it, and you would close out. Now, let's quickly go over to SharePoint, and let me go here to the library that we set up to hold the uploaded vendor invoices, and let me show you where you turn on that feature. So you, again, provided you have the proper rights to do so, you click on Library, you click on Library Settings. You click on Version Settings, and the very top here is where we have that turned on, Content Approval. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody there. All right. So how do you actually use it? Well, you need to go into a screen where you have it set up. Again, this shows the voucher and adjustment entry screen. And there's actually two areas here that could have it. We actually were at the document level. So at the document level, what you do is you click on that, and you see this over in the upper right-hand corner. Click right there, and it'll say Notes and Attachments. You're going to select Attachments. This screen will pop up. It'll show you what you already have attached, and as you can see those documents within SL. And then you can also upload new documents there as well. Again, talking about the custom file name parsing workflow, basically what it did is it took the first 6 letters or first 6 characters of the file name, it put it into vendor ID, it took the next 6 characters after _INV, put them into invoice number, and it took the date and put it into the invoice date field. Obviously, you could have other factors here as well. Once it's in there, it'll show up as pending. You'll go to, there's 2 different places, and I'll show you that in the demo, where you can go to get this screen that allows you to approve and reject. And you can approve or reject and put a comment about that approval or rejection that will be stored in SharePoint. And it's, once again, time for a live demo. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to the voucher and adjustment entry. And I'm going to select this one. And here, and then you see the attachments. Click on that. And those are the 3 that I talked about. Notice you see them there. And then you would just do upload. You'd find whatever you wanted. Those are the 3 that are uploaded. You'd upload additional files, and they would go into the document library as pending. So let's go and look at that. So notice I have 2 pending, 1 approved. If we actually go to another view that's built in for when you do the content approval, it'll show you which ones are pending, which ones are approved, and it actually shows the approver comments right there. And so there's 2 ways, as I mentioned, to actually do an approval. So I can either click right there, and then right there, and I can say approve, reject. Or if I select it, hold on a second. Here has the selector, and I go up to Files, and I get the ribbon for that, and I can click on Approve, Reject up there. So I can say rejected, customer wants to short pay. Well, that's actually not right. This is the vendor. Vendor is overcharging for items. Okay, we click on OK. And then if we go back here, we see which one is pending, which one has been rejected, and which one has been approved. So that's attachments. Are there any questions out there, Gary? Anyone jumping in and banging the doors down to ask questions? Gary, you still awake?
I don't see any at this point.
Okay, good. And you're still awake, so that's good news, because that you could be representative of everyone out there. So so let's go back and talk some more about our second topic, which is going to be DocShare. Okay. So what is DocShare? With DocShare, you can publish documents such as invoices, purchase orders, and we'll go over the specific things that are set up to do outside of the box, and construction billing reports on Microsoft SharePoint sites to help your customers and vendors gain quick and easy access to the information that they need, or more easily for you and people in the accounting department or other people, sales, etc., to gain access to some of these documents internally. If a vendor, customer, or project is set up to use DocShare, and that means the vendors that are in SL, if that vendor maintenance setup is set up to use it, or customer maintenance setup, or project maintenance setup is set up to use DocShare, the documents that you designate will be published to a SharePoint site automatically when you print or print preview them, unless you choose not to, and we'll talk about that. Now, one of the things that you need to note is that if you aren't already using it already, an application server must be installed and running on your SL architecture on your network for DocShare to actually work. So as we talked about, there's customers, there's vendors, and their projects, and they refer to them as entities because you're going to potentially set up each of these differently, right? And so some of this will kind of be repetition in terms of what the options are, but remember you're addressing each of them differently. So as it relates to the customer entity, you can either create a site per customer or a library per customer, which is usually what we recommend. And it will actually support publishing to the specific customer document library if you have a library set up per customer using the following screens. So invoice and memo in AR, statements in AR, invoice in order management, order confirmation in order management, and shipping notice in order management. And as you well know, if you do any of these activities, when you print those, you have multiple customers involved. So in one printing, if you have DocShare configured to do so, it will upload the individual invoices or statements or shipping notices to the specific and correct customer library. Okay, and that's what the next line there says. Now, so as you're in SharePoint, you can obviously move around and get to these different libraries, but even if you're in SL, you'll have links to these customer libraries through either the customer maintenance screen, the customer history screen, or the customer inquiry screen. So each of them will have a button for you to jump over into that library or site if you decide to do a site. So this gives you an idea of the configuration. So the first thing, as we talked about, is you select the entity type. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to give a root site URL. So if it's libraries, that will be the site that you're keeping those different libraries in. If it's if you're creating a site, that'll be the parent site of all of those sites. And so then it says the two options: create a site, create a document library. Depending on which one you select, you'll select different things either under the URL prefix and the site template that you would use, or the document library name and the document library template that you would use. 3 configurations: whether you want to be prompted, whether you want to disable it, which actually, you know, kind of defeats the purpose of setting up the screen, or whether you want it to be automatically created. And then it shows you the 5 things, I'm sorry, that we talked about: AR invoices, AR statements, order confirmation, order management invoice, and shipping notice that you can work with there. Now for vendors, you can create a site per vendor, or a library per vendor. Again, that's what we recommend usually. And basically for vendor, the focus for DocShare is on purchase orders. So again, if you print purchase orders and you have these vendor libraries set up, it'll it'll upload the purchase orders to the correct library. As with customer, you can get to those libraries for the specific vendors from either the vendor maintenance screen, the vendor history screen, or the vendor inquiry screen. Didn't show you the screen again because it's basically the same type, because we're recommending that you set up a library for it. Project entity, again, you can create a site or a library. In this case, with project, we usually recommend that you set up a site, and if you're actually using our Compass product, we have that site established, because each time you put in an item for a new project that you're either working on or you've been awarded, it will create a dedicated site for that project, as you may remember from our early slides. So what that will do is allow you to do either invoice print from Flexible Billings module, or the construction billing print, which is the AIA invoices from the Flexible Billings. Again, same thing as with the project and as with the vendor and customer. With projects, you can access that project site, if that's what you decide to set it up, from the project maintenance, project net profit, task net profit, and project analyzer screen. So all of those will give you access to that. So just, a little bit different here. A lot of the things are the same, but remember, the root site URL is the parent site. So in this case, we call it projects. The subsite URL prefix is project, and then it's going to put the project there. And then the site template is what you're going to use. It needs to contain the libraries. You'll see that in the demo. But you can also have other things in there as well, so that you're creating the site from here. And the live demo is now coming at you. Okay. So let's look at some of those screens again. We didn't show you here, but that is actually the same place with attachments, SharePoint site configuration. And if you right-click there, you have the customer, project, and vendor. And it went out and checked and made sure it was there. Here's the root site. Notice we have it creating a document library here. And so it's going to be SL Docs and then underscore and then the customer ID. And there's the template, and then obviously here's everything supported, enable default creation. And then we can go and look at the other ones. Well, vendors very similar, as I mentioned. We'll go look at project. See, it supports the construction billing report and the flexible billing invoice. We have this under projects, and it'll be project underscore in the name of the project, and there's the template. There you go. Okay, so once you've made all those decisions, you set up all of those screens. How do you actually use it? So let's go back and look at that. So for customer invoice statement example, if you go to this invoice screen, one of the ones that you can do, you'll notice that once you have it set up, it has a checkbox here for you to not publish the DocShare request. So if you want to do a print preview just to look at it, or you want to print out some drafts, you can click on that so it doesn't send them up. Otherwise, it will actually do that. Here's an example of them after they're uploaded. The nice thing about DocShare is it actually creates this file name for you. so that if you have the parsing, a parsing workflow available, it will parse it out from the information that's created out of SL through DocShare. And notice over here we have the different libraries. These are each libraries for each of the customers, and they're the customer IDs right there. Vendors, similar way. Remember, just for right now, supports printing purchase orders, allows you to do drafts, etc., by clicking on the Do Not Publish. Here's basically two situations here for vendors as well, where it has the SL Docs underscore and then the vendor ID. Here's your basic setup here, and then here's the approve reject that we looked at when we looked at SL attachments. Flexible billing, again, here's the flexible billing screen, and here's your do not publish DocShare requests to SharePoint. It allows you to suppress that if these aren't the final billings that you want to go up to SharePoint.
Jim, when you have a second, we actually have a question.
What? Okay, let's do it now.
The question is, can we upload a preliminary invoice so a project manager can see the invoice for approval?
Absolutely. And that might be the process that you set up. So you can, at any of those points, you can set that up for the preliminary setup. Now, one of the things that you can also set up within SharePoint, this is actually a great question, is what's called versioning. So if you upload it more than once and you have versioning set on, it actually would copy over that, but not, and replace it as the current version, but it'll put the other one in a previous version. So you can have a preliminary and a final. You can also have the two approvals too, because if you have something approved, but then you copy over it again, it actually replaces it, and so it reverts back to pending. So hopefully that made sense. Are they giving you feedback that answered their question? Yes? No? Maybe? Carrie?
Jim, does it matter which version they're on?
This is supported both in 2011 and 2015, and is supported in SharePoint 2010 and 2013.
Thank you.
Okay. So this gives you an idea here of projects. Notice I have, some of this thing in my setup here, as we'll go and see, where these are actually sites now for these different projects as opposed to libraries. Okay.
Jim, they wanted to know, is it for all the versions of 2011 SP and FP?
Yes. Yes, it is. I could stand corrected on that, but I'm 95% sure that it's supported in all the versions.
Thank you.
And it's starting to be supported in terms of attachments in web apps in 2015, starting with expense reports. So the SharePoint side will be the same as far as that goes. This gives you an idea of the flexible billing. So you're in that project. Just for simplicity's sake, I just had 2 libraries in that. Normally, if you had a whole site for a project, you'd have a lot more. But same type of functionality. So let's go and look at all of that. Okay. So let's go here first, and we're going to look at the invoice. And you see here where you have the do not publish. So if you wanted to do that, if I do print preview, I'm not sure I have this configured to actually show anything, but in this case we won't print it to SharePoint. Yeah, I don't think I have anything set up here, but if there were things here, if there were like 5 different invoices, and this wasn't checked, those would what would be published to all that. So that is for customers and invoices. Statements would be done the same way. For vendors and printing purchase orders, and obviously these are all available under the specific modules. I just thought for time's sake I would put them on the favorites. Again, you have the do not publish DocShare request to SharePoint available.
A couple of other questions that are popping through.
Okay.
Are there any tools to mark up the invoices and return it with markups? So I would imagine that's on the approvals.
Well, the best way to do something like that, right, if you're actually returning it, is either to approve it with comments, or, I mean, just built in without getting too complicated, is to approve it with comments or reject it with comments, so that the person who then goes in and looks at that can see what those comments are. I'd probably say you would reject it with comments. They would go in, make a correction, it would reset it to pending, and then it could be approved.
Okay.
I mean, there are a number of things out there if you have PDFs that can mark up PDFs, and with the versioning you could kind of keep that there as well, but we don't recommend any specific products for that. We'd help you support whatever products like that you already have in your enterprise. And then the last one we were going to look at was the flexible billing, which is the invoice print. And I think I have to select a biller here. And then there you go, do not publish DocShare requests to SharePoint. So let's look on the SharePoint side here. So I'm going to go over here to my SL DocShare. We're going to look at customers. And we'll see here that we can actually, for those of you who work in SharePoint, you know this is what's called grouping in the views. And so we grouped it by the type of document that could be part of the parsing. That allows you to kind of see what's what, but keep them both together in the same library, so you don't necessarily have to have 2 separate sections for that. Again, our approve reject. I didn't put any comments for the approved here, but if I had, they would show up there. Divides them up into what was approved and rejected. Again, same sort of thing. If you click here, approve reject. Say reject, and say, you know, should include for gadgets as well. So that's now rejected. Vendors, very similar. Again, you have all the vendors over here. Here's where you have approved and pending. Again, go here, see whether there are any comments. And these were all potentially, these could have been from all one printing. Okay? And if you hadn't printed to a vendor here that had a library, it would create that library for you and then put the purchase order for that specific vendor in there, or purchase orders if there were multiple ones in a run. Then again with projects, remember these are all different sites, so you see projects up there. So I think I just configured this first one. So if we go into construction billing, there's actually one, but we basically used it for flexible billing. And there you see the parsing out there as well. And again, you can go here and see the ones that are pending and the ones that are approved, and any comments that you see there. So hopefully we have more questions, because that's all I have to present for today. I think in my effort to make sure I didn't go over, I've actually gone a little bit under, although we definitely wanted to leave time for some questions here at the end.
We do actually have a couple of questions that have popped in since we last took a question break.
That's awesome.
And the first one says, I have noticed that you've used PDFs throughout the presentation. Are there any other types like Word or Excel that are supported?
Right. Now, with DocShare, most of them are going to be PDFs, just because that's kind of what people like to look at and send. But with SL attachments, you can use pretty much everything that SharePoint supports. Obviously, Word documents and Excel are fairly well integrated into SharePoint in terms of being able to open them and work with them right from SharePoint. So now it actually does support more than PDFs.
And another question, looks like this must be on approvals. Can you send those approvals to a specific user?
Well, you can't necessarily send them to a specific user, but you can create user permissions, and depending upon the user permissions, only certain people can actually do the approval. Obviously, I'm set up with all permissions here as I work with this, but you can set it up so that certain people have permissions to view it. You can also, from a viewing perspective, have it so you can have like people who work with the pending, people who are approvals, and then you can have another set who only see the ones that are approved, so they won't even see the pending. So based on the user's permissions, you can set up those three groups in any or all of these libraries.
Also, too, there was a question to explain more about the sites and libraries.
Okay, so the way that SharePoint works is you create a base container called a site collection. And within that site collection, you can start creating lists and libraries underneath it, which are functional units of SharePoint, if you will. Or you can, in addition to that, create subsites. So you can actually have multiple levels of sites within a site collection. The way the site collection works in the background is it matches up with a database, which is what's behind all of SharePoint's information. It's actually dynamically created from the database, and then you obviously back up that database, and so it's a lot safer than creating a number of different pages like you would in a normal website. And so so what I've done here, actually, we have a site collection called HWY. I created a site called Projects, and I have projects underneath that. I created a site called SL Docs, and under SL Docs I created another site called CUS for Customer, and V for Vendors. And then under that, we have all of these. So if you click on Site Content, so the site content of this vendor site underneath SL Docs has site assets and site pages, which come by default, and then it has a document library for each of these different vendors that were created as part of the DocShare process.
There's another question asking if there's SL documentation on the features that we've seen today.
Yes, there is. It's in most of the information with DocShare and attachments is in I'm trying to remember which one this is. It's where it's covered in the section for system manager, so I think it's the administration guide. Actually, the version I have here with the documentation starts with DocShare starts on 66 under system manager, and attachments is there as well. So yeah, there is a fair amount. I wouldn't say it's extensive, but there's a fair amount of documentation on this. This slide deck, I think, is going to be made available upon request, and the recorded webcast will be available as well for the future for you to go in and review all of this.
Another question is, what is the biggest challenge in implementing DocShare?
The biggest challenge in implementing DocShare is planning. It's really a challenge for planning, but specifically, I think on the SharePoint side, which is a big challenge for SharePoint in general, is people thinking ahead. It's kind of an easy platform to get things up and running on. So a lot of times people let people quote unquote run with it, which is kind of okay at the beginning, but if you don't kind of come in with some sort of planning initiative and architecture initiative and what's called governance, which means you kind of want things to be consistent, then you're going to kind of get in trouble. You know, a lot of the things that we had here were kind of in the background, the templates for the project, when you create projects, and the templates for the libraries, those are already in the background and were already part of this architecture, right, as part of this presentation. So a lot of things went on behind this to kind of set that all up. But I would say it's just kind of thinking it out. Obviously, excuse me, as with any project, you want to think about your goals, think about some of the things, the challenges in your business that you're trying to address with it. But it's really planning it out, having it organized, make sure you understand kind of what I just talked about with the previous question, how SharePoint's structured, how the people who use it can most effectively get in and get the information that they need and do the tasks that they need to do in an efficient manner.
There's a comment that came in from an SIS team member, Sunata. Basically, in reference to an earlier question about approval sent to a specific user, we can set up workflows to email documents to specific users and set up a workflow based on the conditions of that document status. For example, and they've referenced AP approvals, A_P uppercase approval, P-R-O-V-A-L.
And Sunita is part of our awesome development team, and she should know, and I'm sure she has done a number of projects as well. She's been here. I've been here a little bit over a year. She's been here definitely longer than that, so she's probably had some projects that she's got involved with this as well, and that's absolutely correct. You know, I tried to just do some simple workflows, but there's a number of different workflows that we could either custom write if they're one-offs, or as I mentioned, we have the Compass workflow engine and the Compass activity routing engine that we can make available to people who have interest in having them installed and implemented and being the basis for part of their solution. Did we run out of questions, Gary?
Yes, I don't see any more questions.
And I think we have most of the people we started out with. I think we had a few people drop off. I'm going to assume those are SIS people who were busy and had to get onto their tasks. So I think that's it. Hopefully you won't take too long to go over the last few slides, and people can get out a little bit early and maybe take a little break. I will do that.
Well, we'll wrap up right now, and when we are wrapping up, we want to make sure that we remind you about the SL Users Group Conference. It's going to be September 16th through the 18th in San Antonio, Texas. You can actually get a $30 discount by using that code that's on the screen. One thing that we should mention about the SL Users Group Conference, it's actually the premier conference for SL users yearly. It actually attracts much more membership than any of the other events, including Convergence. And we'd like to thank you for joining us. And once again, if you have any other Dynamics SL and SharePoint integration questions you'd like, you can actually contact Mr. Hayes directly. Here's his information on the screen. And as always, Talisha will be happy to answer any other question or about this or any other products. And with this, we'd like to thank you for joining us today, and please look for another SIS Customer Webcast Series webinar. Thank you.
Thanks for your time, everybody.